Welcome to the Seek Wilderness Podcast, a platform for outdoor adventures of storytelling, for gaining basic knowledge of hunting, fishing, and woodsmanship. A place to find inspiration to go do epic stuff this week. Seek Wilderness.
All right, we're live. Welcome back to Seek Wilderness Podcast. John, how was your weekend?
The weekend was, it went by fast, man. So my oldest daughter turned 17 on the 19th, and my youngest daughter turns 2 on the 18th. So we did both of their birthdays Saturday, and that leaked into Sunday. So, but it was good, man. How was yours? You have a good weekend?
It wasn't bad. We had some, I didn't get a chance to get out. I had to stick around the house on Sunday. My wife pulled a muscle on her back, and she was kind of laid up for a day. Yeah, I had to go grocery shop and everything yesterday. So
yeah.
Anyway,
no, I hear you, man. I hear you. My wife, she twisted her ankle, so she's in a boot, and then today she's been sick with some kind of stomach thing all day. So hopefully that won't go throughout the house. But
yep.
But anyway, listen, man. So since we started posting these things on YouTube, we did have a question come in. I thought this would be a good opportunity just to kind of address it. It came from the Dieter's YouTube video. And the guy doesn't have a name, so we're just going to call him Al.
Al, okay.
We'll just call him Al.
That's my tax guy, but okay.
Yeah. Right. So his original question was any strategies for WMA hunting in New Jersey. And, so after just responding a couple times, basically what he's saying is that he's only seeing bucks on scrapes during the rut. He has bucks on scrapes at night, but he feels like he moved closer to bedding, but even still is only seeing, does during daylight and no bucks. And I said, hey, you know what? Let's see if we can, Todd and I can brainstorm this thing for you and get you some ideas and or strategies or thoughts. So you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, let's go. So first of all, you said he's talking about a wildlife management area. So more than likely he's going to probably have skewed numbers anyway. So most wildlife management areas in New Jersey, there's not going to be as many bucks as there is does for number one. So that's one thing he's got to consider. You said something that he's getting like 9 does on
up to 9 does, yeah.
Up to 9 does on camera. During daylight, right?
Yeah.
So when you generally scout public land in New Jersey, I find that you should get into does pretty quick. But there is pieces where there's not a lot of bucks. There's food for the does, and there's enough bedding for a few doe groups. But the bucks will bed off. They could be off in the reed someplace, and then inland a little bit. Let's put it this way. I have a place that is a doe factory all fall long, but in the rut, right around the last week of October, bucks will come in from the reeds. So it's a little bit higher ground. It's not reed property. So it's not, coastal and stuff. It's not reed property. And there won't be many bucks in there at all in the early season in October and September and all that stuff that you won't even get like nighttime pictures. There won't be rub scrapes, nothing in there. And then right around October, bucks will come floating in from all the farms around the area, all the reeds and all that kind of stuff. So that's not really uncommon to have a place that's loaded with does. It's really not.
My thought. So he's getting pictures of bucks at night. Now I didn't ask, how although it's dark, how close to last light or first light is it, just to get some point of reference? Because my initial thought was that he said he found bedding. So my thought with all the does, he's probably in doe bedding, in a doe bedding area, or very, very close to it, which typically, from what I've seen, bucks are going to be, further off that. So he either needs to go, I would say at least 75, wherever the direction of those does are coming in, I would say go 75 yards to 100 yards in deeper scouting, or if you don't have time to scout, just do it on a hunt and see what you can find there. But I don't. I mean, not knowing whether how close to private or anything like that. If he's seeing those bucks, during the rut, but at night, leads me to think that it's probably a pretty heavily hunted, high pressured area, right? But they got to be somewhere. What do you think? I mean, even if they're coming at 10 o'clock at night, they still got to be somewhere.
So Al, right now you're asking the question, and we're just getting into green up right now. So you're asking the question right now, but in all actuality, in the last 2 months, you should have been in those. In my opinion, you should have been in those areas and figuring out where the bucks are bedding. So a lot of guys just call a thick area that they find a lot of beds in a bedding area, and it is for does.
Yes.
So the difference between the buck bedding and doe bedding sometimes can only be like 50 yards, depending on the size of the piece. So some of these little places are really, really small. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that you can decipher between does and bucks, does there'll be groups of beds.
Yep.
In an area. So they're not using any of the terrain features at all to their advantage, does.
Yep.
When they're in doe groups, when they're in family groups and 2 and 3 year old does that are with an older mom or something like that, and then the fawns from that following year, the past spring, they're just protecting themselves by having sheer numbers. Yep. Looking in all different directions, eyes and ears in all different directions, and noses. Bucks are going to have some sort of feature that allows them to watch what's going on. Generally, they're going to be overwatching a trail where humans come in from, or every possible, They're going to have a place that's so thick, so nasty, or just some sort of structure that they know nothing can get behind them. Mm-hmm. They're going to have that, and they're going to be watching or smelling towards where everything could possibly come from where danger can come from. So bucks and does bed completely different. This is the time of year, you still got a little bit of time. This is the time of year to walk those pieces and find those single beds that are on a little bluff overlooking a spot, or on even a little 4-foot rise in a very, very flat spot, or in a real low spot, sometimes it's just a clump of roots at the base of a tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That gives him enough advantage to be able to know there's water behind him, but yet he can watch the land in front of him, kind of thing.
So you almost wonder then, would it make sense if he's focused on this scrape, figure the prevailing wind, or if he has trail camera data of these does coming to the scrape, look back at the dates of those, see what the wind was, and then get downwind from that scrape as far as you can until you see what it is that you're talking about, some sort of possible elevation, back cover, something like along those lines.
Yeah, I would do that, but I would do that in the wintertime. And then since he does have some nighttime pictures or some pictures of bucks, like he's got some data there that I would never have. He's got trail cam pictures. So, kind of backtrack from where the deer was coming from and going to, you know what I mean? Yep. Like he's got like a direction, and he's got a time stamp. So it's not, he knows if it was morning, he knows if it was just an hour after dark, you know what I mean? He's got a time stamp there as long as his camera's all set up right. So he's got a lot more data than I would have. So I would use some of that information and backtrack that buck back to beds and go find those beds. And that buck in one piece might have 2 or 3 different beds that he favors, and it could be just basically wind based. And get down in the bed. I know it sounds corny and everything, but just get to the bed, find the bed, and just figure out like what's making that buck bed right here. That bed's going to be way bigger than those doe beds. It's going to be by itself. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be by itself.
It's going to be by itself. It's going to be way bigger. And there's going to be he's going to almost have his back against a tree or a deadfall or you know what I mean, a clump of trees or something like that. He's going to have his back against something like that. Where the does are they're just going to be spread out. They're going to be in like a circle. You know, we didn't get any snow this year, but that's the best time to go find those things.
Yeah,
but I think the bucks will bed And as we get closer to the rut, the buck is going to find a mound or a little high spot or just a really good spot where he can monitor those does coming through. He knows where those does are bedding, so he can monitor them. And I mean, when you get late October and early November, that's when there'll be bucks that bed solely on watching doe groups or watching trails of doe groups. And then when we get into that first week in November, then they're just up. It's random, not necessarily random. They got specific places they're going, but they are traveling even during the daytime. From anytime from 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the morning, they get back up, and that's when I see the majority of my bucks in the rut. Never sunrise unless they're with a doe or something that, you know what I mean? Like you kick a doe and a buck off each other or something like that. But the bucks are laying on their bellies until like 9:30 in the morning, in my experience. Yeah. During the rut.
I did see of the bucks that I've seen during the rut. You're right. I've only seen one out of, I'm thinking of this past season. 1 out of 4 or 5 that was like 30 minutes after sunrise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think what's going on there is if they're with a doe, they're going to be laid up someplace off. That doe is going to dictate when they're moving. You know what I mean? When he's with her. So if he's locked down with a doe, she's already doing what does would do. She's already back laying down at sunrise or, first half hour after sunrise, or whatever. She's laying down. They're in some secluded little area laid down. You're not going to see that buck anyway. Yeah. What I'm talking about, what I'm looking for is the bucks that are either coming off a doe, still looking for a doe that don't have does. Those bucks are going to lay down till about 9:30 because they were up all night hitting all the nightclubs. You know what I mean? They were all chasing and trying to find a girl all night long, and then they're going to come home and be like, or not necessarily come home, but go to a place that offers good cover in the morning. They're going to lay up for a little bit, and then around 9:30 they're going to get anxious to get up and start moving again. And that's usually from like the 4th or 5th of November until the 10th to 12th of November is when you're looking for those cruisers, so
good deal
in my experience.
Yeah. Good deal. So, Al, hopefully that gives you at least some thoughts. And I wouldn't suggest waiting until next winter to do that. Go in there as soon as you can, or even if you can't get in there till the fall, do it anyway. Because what you can do is then add another piece, replicate the thing, and for next year. Or
our high bush stuff, like our everything that's budding, bushes with buds and leaves. The leaves are sprouting now. The trees are getting good sized leaves on them now. But the ground isn't necessarily, all the grass isn't filled in on the ground. So you're gonna be able to see tracks. You're gonna be able to see trails. You're gonna be able to see rubs, and scrapes are still. You can still find. Rubs and scrapes. You know what I mean? You can still find them right now. So,
all right, good deal.
Yep.
So, we're starting our second episode of Traditional Bow Series. Traditional Bow Month, I guess, is what we're doing, right?
Yep.
So you want to tell the folks of about our next guest?
Yeah, our next guest is somebody that I'm really surprised that he even answered my. Answered anything from me. I mean, this dude is he has got one video that's got 1.8 million views in the traditional archery realm. That's pretty huge, man. You know what I mean? He was the producer of a huge video. Probably one of the biggest traditional podcasts / video type thing that's went on in the last 5 or 6 years. He was one of the original people on the push. He has since kind of split off and is doing his own thing now. He just started at the beginning of the year. Yeah. But it's Tim Nebel of the Traditional Bow Hunting Podcast. Nice. Like I said, he was one of the original producers and owners of the push. So I'm anxious really, really anxious to get him on the line and start talking to him. And if you looked at any of the links and anything that I sent you about his background and some of the things he's been involved in, dude, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, we're going to jump over to that conversation right now. Let's do it.
All right. All right. Welcome back to the Seek Wilderness Podcast. You guys already got the intro to this one. So let's go right into it. Mr. Tim Nebel. Dude,
Welcome,
thank you
Tim.
so much for coming on here, man. You're a big guest for us.
I don't know why, but when I saw that countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I just got nervous. I got like a sick feeling in my stomach for some.
Wait, what? Really?
I will say this. I wish that you would have had me on before Mike Verity, Murder Inc.
Okay.
I feel like I'm complete amateur mode compared to him. So you should have had me on before him in that order.
Yeah. I don't know about that, buddy. You're killing some slobs. I've been following you well, let's put it this way. So one of the very first things I ran into some content with a group that you used to be involved with. That was when I started making my switch. I mean, I think there's 1.8 million people that have watched that video. And that's probably been the first step of probably 1.2 million people that have watched it when they decided that in the last 7 or 8 years that they want to switch over to traditional. I think that's probably the first video that they watch. So, to be able to have somebody that has been pushing our game, been pushing our sport the way that you have in the last 7 or 8 years is really, really big to me, man. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to come on here and just why don't you quickly go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners, some of the people. We're not necessarily a traditional bow hunting. We're more of a general outdoors, but we've been in the whitetail hole since we started 8 months ago or something like that, and we haven't been able to get out of it very much.
Yeah, that's my jam. That's I also understand it's trad month. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's right.
It's going to go probably a month and a half. We got 8 people lined up already. So
real quick, I'm sorry. So for everybody listening, like as we're recording this, we're hearing Todd kind of get garbled here and there, and we've tried troubleshooting this. My hope and prayer is that as this gets recorded and uploaded, that goes away. But we should be able to get the gist of the conversation, hopefully. So don't leave us because of Todd's garbly goop there. But
that's severe laryngitis.
Yeah, just wanted to get that out up front because we tried to resolve it, and we're just hunters that we decided to start a podcast and wonder why sometimes. Yeah. With that, Tim, go for it.
Yeah. Well, my name's Tim Nebel. I am 38 years old. I just turned 38 a few weeks ago. I live in Southeast Ohio. I was born and raised in Western PA with a dad that was an absolute and still is whitetail maniac. So I grew up seeing that. Some of my earliest memories were kind of waiting by the back door and looking through the glass window for him to get home from his hunts and checking his quiver, seeing if he was an arrow short, on cold October, November days. So that's kind of what I grew up seeing. He was carrying me around the woods on his shoulders. And I grew up in Western PA. Started out rifle hunting when I was 12. That's the legal age in PA when you're 12. Got pretty into it at that point. Started to bow hunt a little bit in my teens. Had a hand-me-down compound. I think it was a Pro line from one of my uncles gave me. Early mid-90s, he gave me that bow and some 2117s from a local shop and some old satellite Titan broadheads. And kind of just told me, here's an old hand-me-down tree stand, go at it. And I just failed for probably 6 or 8 years. I had a lot of encounters and just didn't have a lot of success. And eventually things started to click with the compound. And several years after that, made the switch to traditional. Right around the same time I moved to Ohio, the driving factor between, with me moving here was we had a really short season in PA. You had to be done bow hunting by like the second week of November, like November 10th, 11th, 12th, something like that. It's like just when things are getting good. you can't bow hunt anymore. And I remember thinking, like, these last 2 days of the season every year are the best action I ever see. And then, like, boom, it's over. You can't hunt anymore. So I was a single guy at that point. Just kind of picked up, changed jobs, and found a little nasty apartment over here and just moved in, sucked it up for a couple years. But yeah, over here, you know, we have a super long season. You can hunt till from like the last weekend of September to about Groundhog Day. So it's, and deer a little bit bigger too. So it's, yeah. So I, you know, made myself happy over here and found a wife. We have a little boy now. Yeah, just kind of started a life over here. So that's about it.
That's it, right? Okay. Case closed. I think there's a little more to it there, Tim Nebel. I really do. So, like I said, I've been following you for, you know, just, you know, 7 or 8 years, whatever, however long my traditional journey is, you know, the podcasts and things that you've done, you're basically right up there with Joe Rogan in the traditional space as one of the OGs of podcasting, especially for traditional, if not all of bow hunting. So, yeah, you're one of the OGs, man, for sure. So some of the things that you've put out there, you've done a lot of videos and you've done a lot of content work, with, the old group that you were with. So, some of the deer that you've killed over the years, man, the adjustment to a different state, I think, has really kind of paid off. I mean, Western Pennsylvania has been really up and coming in the last few years, but I think Southeast Ohio is proven for you to, you've killed some slobs out there, man.
Yeah, I'm losing it a little bit there, but I think I got most of it. Yeah, Western PA, there's a couple, without giving too much away and pissing people off that live there. There's a few pockets in Western PA that are really, really, really good. Like as good as anywhere in Ohio, even into like Indiana and Illinois, for sure. But the area that I was in, it wasn't really like that. It was kind of, you know, there might be a 115, 120 inch 8-point that you would see in a year, maybe, you know, and it's at that point it was kind of, I mean, it was still fun. You know, it was, you know, the number one hobby that I had, you know, it was fun enough and enriching enough of a pastime to be you know, to really possess me as a young kid. But I think for a lot of people, there just comes a point where you're like, man, I either have to go on an out of state trip every year, or, you know, when you really get ate up with it, start to, you know, want to kind of look for something a little different.
So at what point did you make the transition to trad, or did you mentioned you had a compound, so at some point you had to make a transition, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2015, I believe. Yeah, it was in the summer of 2015, and I was that compound guy that had a new to me compound every year. Like I would get on AT, I'd be on Archery Talk, and I would buy a bow that some dude had bought 6 months ago, shot 200 arrows through it, you know, he's selling it for 70% of what he bought it for. So I would be that guy. And I'd roll through like 2 bows a year like that, just trying to try out everything I possibly could. But that was like, you know, it kind of got, I don't know, I don't want to say it got boring, but I just wanted to see, you know, what else was out there. And I'm guessing you guys are going to ask me like, what was the main driving factor, you know, of switching to traditional? And I think for me, I think you asked Verity that same question. And for me, it was, I wanted the opportunities that I had. I wanted the encounters that I had during deer season to be more dramatic. It's kind of a weird word to use there, but I wanted them to be more, you know, more dramatic.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I mean, I can't imagine right now, like, more dramatic. I can see like the main reason to being, this is just me, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It's almost like more primal. It's as primal as you can get as a hunter from generations ago, going back to those roots. And that to me is what's like really attractive about traditional bow hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. Primal is a good word too. And I can see this because I currently hunt some of the same farms that I used to with a compound. And there's a few sets that I have, a few trees that I hang stands in that I know the tree that I used to sit in prior to 2015 and now the tree that I sit in now. And it's a difference between, like, I would hang a stand 25 yards from a trail. And now I'm hanging that same stand 10 yards from the trail.
Yeah.
So now I can see, and I can hear that deer breathing. I can see the whites of his eyes. I can, you can see flies landing on his nose when he's coming. I guess that's what I mean by dramatic. It's just more of a kind of like a personal encounter.
Yeah, intimate. It's
intimate. Good word too.
Yeah, it's a lot more intimate, and your setups and your scouting, your just every bit of your plan has got to be buttoned up tight. It's got to be. You have to think about 15 yards and in. Those even 20. Yeah. I mean, I would always set up with a compound 20, 25 yards. That would be my thing. But now I'm lower to the ground. I set up lower to try to get that as much profile of that deer as I can, with less bone structure that's up on the on the top side of the deer. And there's just so much to the traditional lifestyle and everything. I'm doing things that I was doing when I was 12 years old, 30, 40 years ago. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And even there's other things that are more involved in it too. You know what I mean? Like, I always just took knives and stuff like that to my grandfather when I was a kid, because his generation knew how to sharpen things. And, like one of the very first things you got to learn once you get your bow set up is how to clean up broadheads, because you're going to be missing. They're going to be falling off your bow and falling into the dirt. You know what I mean? Like, the whole learning curve. And the learning curve really is just setting us back about 40 or 50 years ago to when that's what the bow hunters were doing back in those days. They were reading sign. They were looking for tracks. They weren't worried about the trail cameras as much. They were out there actually scouting and reading sign and getting themselves as close as they could back in those days. And that part of the game for me is what I love about it. I really, really love that part. So when I hear you talk about the setups, how they've changed and evolved when you went back to trad, Tim, or went to trad, that right there, I mean, that tightens a bolt in my heart. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that just has always grinding my gears. You know what I mean? Like, and to hear somebody else say it and put it in those words, and you're really good with the way you speak too. So I'm not. So
I feel like I'm terrible with the way I speak.
No, dude, you're not.
I think we all think that way
not.
about ourselves.
Yeah, you're a word crafter. Let's put it that way. When I've listened to so many of your podcasts over the years, and if I'm driving out to go trout fishing or something like that, the new podcast came out this week, I got to listen to it. Or if I did a lot of screen time. I was a salesman for the last few years, and a lot of windshield time. And the thing I always liked about your perspective has always been more of a hunter than than trying to be a world-class archer or a competitive archer. And that's one of the things where I've always been able to relate with your side of things so well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that I, overlook the shooting aspect. I still shoot like crazy. I mean, I shoot, I kind of, I of course slow down, and like our season ends in February. I don't shoot much the second half of February to March, but like once it starts warming up, like now I'm shooting, especially into July, August, I'm shooting a lot. But like, just like you said, I kind of, if I have 3 hours to burn today on archery and on bow hunting, I'm going to shoot for a half hour, and I'm going to, take that other 2.5 hours and look for sign or move a stand. I'm like a paranoid schizophrenic about moving tree stands, and there's a lot of situations where I'll hang a set, I'll sit in it for 20 minutes on a 3-hour sit in an afternoon, and I'll sit in it for 20 minutes and talk myself out of it.
Right.
It isn't where I need it. I can't picture this going down here. I need to move, and I'll move 60 yards. So, which is it probably bites me a lot too. But.
So are you hunting pretty mobile? You got a pretty mobile setup. How is your, as far as your gear list and your kit right now, as far as in the season? I would assume that you probably have a mixture of some mobile stuff, is, being that you're hunting some farms, you're saying, so probably a lot of private land. So most people would understand that in private land, there's certain pinch points in certain places that set up perfectly to have a permanent stand set up in them. So I would assume you probably have a mix. Am I correct in that? That's
pretty accurate. I have ladder stands that stay in place. Not too many. That maybe like 4 or 5 ladders that stay in place. Mm-hmm. But I have a couple older lone wolf assaults, and I have a beast stand also. And I kind of I play like leapfrog with those stands. Like they're kind of mobile, but I might hang one in an afternoon, and if I think it's a good spot, I'll leave it, knowing I have a truck to move around, and I just kind of like bump those 3 stands around. So it might not be hanging and hunting every single sit, but I have 3 mobile stands that I'm constantly shifting, around it, depending on what I've seen or what cameras are telling me or what pressure is telling me. I use that a lot too. Mm-hmm.
That's good. So go ahead. No, you go ahead, John.
Well, I was going to say, I'm totally switching it because something's going through my mind going back to like how you got started in traditional bow, and then what I'm curious to know, like what drove you. I mean, we can talk about gear all day, and we want to get back to that because I want to know what like your bow setup is. Not that I'm going traditional this year, but what drove you to like get into the content creation side of things? Because you've done incredible with that, both from the podcast and video or YouTube side as well. So did it all start at the same time for you, or how'd that come about?
That came about, I think I was heavily influenced by the Heartland Bowhunter guys. Mm-hmm. Back in the day. This was like 2011, 2012. I was working and living on the road, living out of a hotel. I was doing gas leasing. And another guy on my crew, one of my best friends in the world, Adam Jablonski, he was working on the crew with me, and he was a big bow hunter too. So we would, work during the day, in the evenings, drive around, look for deer, look for turkeys, and we would hunt together also. And that was really when the HB guys were kind of taking off and becoming like a mainstream. They were basically like reinventing how people did outdoor filmmaking at that point, like 2010, 11, 12. Mm-hmm. Yep. We were, we just got obsessed with those guys big time, and we were watching all their stuff and really getting into it. And one day I remember it like it was yesterday, we were sitting in our hotel room after work, and we were watching an episode of that show, and they were hunting in North Dakota on an episode, and they were hunting deer in North Dakota. And I said to Adam, man, wouldn't that be awesome? Like if we could go up there and hunt with those guys, or like, and see what this is all about in different states. Cause neither one of us had hunted out of state before. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to send that guy an email. Nate Flynn was his name. If you guys recognize Nate Flynn from the HB crew. So I just popped on. So I think I sent him a Facebook message or an email or something from his website and said, you guys ever take any deer hunters in there in camp or whatever, thinking like he's probably not going to answer back. Well, like 30 minutes later, he answered back. He's like, yeah. And this was, like July or so. He said, yeah, like we'll take you guys. You guys want to come up and hunt with us for a week or whatever.
Seriously?
So, hell yeah. So we drove 20 some hours up to North Dakota, Adam and I, and spent a week with, Sean Luchtel and Mike Huntsucker, Nate Flynn, Skylar Warsick. Yeah, it was awesome.
That is awesome.
It was awesome. I mean, so Sean and Mike literally taught me how to run my camera in camp that week. Wow. I remember Huntsucker taught me how to take a picture of the moon, like a not a long exposure shot, but like how to expose a shot of the moon on the back of the tailgate in there. And
dude, that is awesome.
we kind of kept in a little bit of contact with those guys afterward, and just kind of left there possessed, I guess. And just, we had a couple cheap DSLRs at the time, and we spent that fall and the next fall just filming each other on turkey hunts and deer hunts. And it kind of, snowballed a little bit from there. But yeah, I think that was definitely what kind of lit our fire with that stuff.
Did you ever go out and produce with South? Were you ever one of the years? There was a few years that I think it was either Ben went out there, and then the following year you went out. Am I correct in saying that?
So I went out before Ben. I was out with South in Colorado in 2018.
2018, okay.
And I went, I went again with him to Nevada in maybe like 2021 or so, 2020, 2021, something like that. But
okay.
So spent those couple hunts with South out there, but I've also edited most of South stuff. Like most of the stuff you've seen from South from the last 5-6 years, a lot of it someone else will film, and they'll send me the footage and I'll edit it too.
Okay. Yeah. So you got producers out there on the trips that you're not there, but you produce some pretty epic stuff too. I think Ben makes some pretty good films as well.
Yeah. I don't deserve to be in the same paragraph as Ben Massey as far as no, I don't. Yeah. Ben is next level type. Yeah. He's like National Geographic kind of stuff.
Yeah. He's pretty good. But I remember the year that you went with South, it was a velvet hunt, I think, correct?
A velvet muley hunt. Yeah.
Yep. That was a pretty epic film, man. It really was.
Yeah. That was a crazy experience. Yeah. I've been friends with South for a while. I shoot his bows and everything. And I sent him a message one night. I was watching one of his videos on YouTube, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I sent him a message and said, "Hey, if you're ever looking for a cameraman, hit me up. Maybe I'll come out." And he's like, "Actually, I am." And it was one of those last minute notice things too. It was like, June, and he does that in August.
Right.
So I am in a month and a half if you want to line stuff up. And I just, I'll probably never have this opportunity again. I scrambled and, talked to my boss and got some time to work. And yeah, that's a gnarly trip. 10 days in the backcountry with that guy, trying to keep 12,000 feet. And yeah, it was pretty wild.
Is he a beast up there or what, man?
Yeah, he is. I think he just turned 50. I hope I have that right. If he listens to this and he's not 50, he'll be peeved. But yeah, he moves around like he's 18.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. Yeah, he moves around like that, and he has no fear as far as like dangerous terrain and maneuvering around, rock ledges and stuff. And like if you're a Midwestern guy, you've never really spent time on that kind of habitat. You're like skipping across rock ledges and stuff with a giant weighted backpack on. It's kind of like gives you the willies. But yeah, he's literally like a goat. He's like a mountain goat.
That's cool. Well, hey, let's take it back to Tim. This is the Tim episode. But your story's not complete without telling about that trip or those trips, though. You know what I mean? So, let's take it back to the Southeast Ohio and some of the whitetails that you're getting on there. Are you like you said? I can kind of tell by what you had said earlier about if I had 3 hours, 30 minutes is going to be shooting my bow, and the other 2.5 is going to be out scouting or moving something around or learning something about the deer on the properties that you hunt. So scouting, you and I are close when it comes to that kind of stuff. I love scouting deer, and that's what makes you successful in the fall. But what kind of, maybe go a little before the baby coming, what kind of time were you putting in? What did a year look like? What did a year look like in the life of Tim Nebel preparing for deer season?
I do a lot, or I used to do more so now, like you said, but July, August, and the whole month of September, I would be glassing fields, like sitting up against a round bale every single night. Like I'd get home from work at 5 o'clock, take care of the dog, walk the dog for a minute, and I'd be back to a hay bale until dark every single night. I'm lucky enough to most of the properties that I hunt, or some of the public that I hunt, is within 15 minutes of the house. Everything is right around the house. I mean, it's literally why I bought my house, because I had hunted these farms previously. So it's, everything's super close and convenient. But yeah, just toward the tail end of summer, a lot of glassing. Before that, I do run a lot of cameras year round, just to kind of keep tabs on what deer are doing. I'm running cameras right now, but as the summer goes on, I think I do things differently than a lot of people do with cameras. I will have a camera in an area, we're talking like 4th of July or so. I only have like maybe 6 trail cameras, and I'll put a camera out with some salt or half a bag of corn or something in July, and I'll put it in an area, and I'll say, I'm going to leave this sit for a week. I'm going to check it in a week. If there's nothing worth going after on this camera, I'm bumping it. So I'll make those 6 trail cameras act like 100 trail cameras after a month. I'll hit whatever that is, 6 times 4. You're hitting like 24 different spots with those trail cameras in the span of a month. So I kind of like, it's kind of nerve wracking when you're trying to keep track of that many things and bounce around that much. But what I find in the summertime, tell me if you guys see differently where you're at, but I might bump a camera in the summer in July or August, and I might bump it 300 yards, and I'll get totally different bucks on that camera than I would in spot number 1, 300 yards away. It seems like they don't move that much around here. And I don't know if it's our terrain here. Just, we have a lot of hilly kind of terrain here and small patches of woods. They don't move very much or what. But yeah, I feel like I have to, and if I can't glass deer, like I said, we have a ton of hills and terrain here, so I can't always glass. I'm not sitting in a truck glassing half a mile away. Sometimes you can only see 300 yards into a field. So I really let cameras do the work sometimes.
I've experienced, cause I primarily hunt ag. So, I'm not on field edges, but I'll, post a camera up May, June, maybe 50 yards off of a main trail going out to the field. And then July, August, I've taken that camera and moved it back. And what I'm doing is trying to narrow it down to where the more mature bucks are. And so I've seen that maybe 200 yards from that spot where the young bucks won't go, only the mature bucks will. So it's kind of similar.
Yeah. And I think people can trick themselves. Like they have a 40-acre farm or 40-acre property, piece of woods, whatever. And they say, well, I'm going to cover this with one camera. And they'll put one camera on a scrape on a field edge. And they leave it sit there for a month and they go check it. Oh, nothing on this farm then. It's like, yeah, maybe slide it back in the woods 200-300 yards. You might get something different on it. I especially see that, like I said, June, July, August.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't hunt a whole lot of ag, and I don't run cameras basically at all. So I'm more of a sign guy and a year-round scouter. I do generally take like turkey season off, but even most of the places where I'm turkey hunting, the only reason I'm turkey hunting there is because I've found birds from deer scouting. So I'm still in those areas, and I'm generally, if I'm on a meadow or something like that, I'm seeing some of the deer that are popping antlers and everything that I'm going to probably be hunting in the fall anyway, in a lot of my spots. So I don't run cameras, so I don't have a lot of that. I never have been a camera guy. I don't know why. I don't have anything against them, obviously, but I'm a 53, almost a 53-year-old guy that comes from the UP, and man, I like to cruise dirt roads. I love to find tracks. I love to find crossing spots. I love to find wet ground that the deer leave tracks and trails and scrapes and rubs. That's my thing there. So I don't really have a lot of trail. I can't really talk to that, but I do hunt some ag in the velvet season in the early opening state here on the East Coast. So we do a lot of like bean field and just off bean field stuff in that velvet time frame there. And one of the guys I hunt with doing that, him and I'll put some cameras out in the summertime but we generally will put them out there around July in places that are getting corners of fields and stuff like that are getting pounded real. You can tell by the tracks and the sign in there and how much they're nibbling, and we'll put cameras up and leave them till that first week of August, and then just kind of check them on our way in to hunt. For the most part, I would say. So yeah, I'm not really a trail cam guy, so I don't really have a lot of that kind of information really. But yeah.
You guys are both in Michigan. John, are you in Michigan also?
No, so we're in New Jersey.
Jersey. Okay.
South
Yeah,
Jersey.
we're both in South Jersey. Like,
Oh, you're both in South Jersey.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
like the actual garden part of the Garden State.
Yeah, it's a garden, the southern part. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
No, I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. When I was 18, I joined the service and was stationed in Philadelphia, which is just across the river from South Jersey. And that's where I met my wife, my future wife at the time. And, so her and I have been in and out of here a little bit, during the service times and then a couple of years after the service. But for the most part, it's always been South Jersey. And to just get to the UP once a year, something like that. So,
Gotcha.
yep. So, yeah, to me, when you have a child, that changes a lot of things. It does. I've got two boys. I got a 26-year-old and a 15-year-old. So there's been a lot of change. I'm kind of I can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. Tim, you'll be there eventually. Trust me, it'll come a lot quicker than you think too, buddy. So enjoy it. Give a little bit of your deer time up right now. Trust me, that kid's way more important than the deer. Obviously, I don't have to tell you that, but and it comes back around, and you'll be able. It'll be a different game when you can start enjoying it with your child. You know what I mean? So that changes, but so for right now, what you're seeing, how old is your new one?
He just turned 8 months on Easter.
8 months.
Brandon.
So you haven't been
Wow.
through you haven't even been around the sun one time yet. So
Yeah.
you're still adjusted to this. You're learning on the fly right now, right?
Yeah. He was born in beginning of August last year, and our season started in late September, and my wife was still ready to leave at that point, so it was kind of it was easier because she was home and everything. But now it'll be a lot different this year. So, but my in-laws are close too, and they really help us out a lot, and they love watching them. So
That's good.
that's the same. That's a similar situation with me. I have she'll be 2 this week. She's my youngest.
Okay.
But there are many evenings where I throw her in the car seat and just go drive around. Yeah, using the scope, checking out fields, all that stuff, putting her to sleep. It's all good.
Yeah.
The other suggestion I would say is either get more cameras, or if you don't use cell cameras, get cell cameras. It saves you a lot of time.
Yeah. I use some cell cameras now. I have a few of them, and man, it's like the first thing I look at when I wake up in the morning. And I don't use them, and I've talked to guys about this before, but like I don't use them so much in a way that is going to like I get up in the morning during season, like, oh, a buck moved through here, I got to get there. Like, I feel like that's that's kind of a shady way to go about using cell cameras. And if people continue to do that, and I'm not saying everybody does that, but I think that, more states will outlaw them eventually if that's the way that people are using them. But I more so use them I just really like looking at deer. I like watching deer. I like seeing what they're doing. And especially, I think when you're watching deer movement in real time that are local to you, my cell cameras are all within 10 miles of my house here. Mm-hmm. And when you're out and you're in your backyard and you see that it's raining in my backyard and none of your cameras are blowing up, like you learn a lot more about deer movement relative to weather conditions than you would if you were pulling a camera card and looking at pictures from the last 2 months.
Yep.
Because not many people are going back and looking at like historical weather data, but when you're looking at it in real time, and it just rained for the past 2 hours, and I didn't have a single picture of a deer during that rain. Like they just don't like moving during heavy rain, but 10, 15 minutes after that rain,
Right.
Ding, 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 ding. Your phone's blowing up. Like or, certain wind directions, you can kind of see different movement, or like, I think that's when you really start to put the pieces together, as far as like guys like to talk about barometric pressure changes. You can look at stuff like that and really correlate between, what your cameras are telling you and what the weather is doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's, I didn't do it the past couple of years, but I got kind of like nerdy with it and started keeping a spreadsheet, wind directions and everything, but that was with SD card cameras, not cell cams. But with the cell cams, yeah, you know exactly what the wind's doing at the time of that, because you're getting the image, and that's primarily. I mean, hey, if the law dropped and said you can run them outside of season but nothing during season, I'd be fine with that. Mm-hmm. I'd be totally fine with that.
Yeah, and I one of my other favorite reasons for them is that I hunt some of the properties that I do with my dad. Also, my dad lives a couple hours away, and it's really cool to talk to my dad about deer that we're both seeing on camera, and him being 2 hours away. I don't have to have him sitting here in front of my computer to show him SD cards.
Yeah.
My dad will text me at 11 o'clock at night, "Hey, that big 8-point is at such and such spot. Did you see that a couple hours ago?" It's just really cool. It's a cool, it's a cool way to talk to your dad about stuff like that at night. And
that's real cool. That's real cool. So if we were to look back at some of the deer you shot, dude, you've shot some really big bucks in Ohio, and throughout your hunting career. What even going into this fall, what type of buck is something that is going to be something that you're are you age? Are you antler? What's good when you're going through and you're finding deer this summer and early fall? What's the bucks? What class or what age structure of deer are you looking for? What's going to trip your trigger this year, knowing that you got a little one at home and your time might be, a little bit short this year?
I want to give you like a feel good answer here, but like honestly, what trips my trigger? It's a 5-year-old buck for sure.
Okay. Yep.
And because I bounce, I bounce around and do so much scouting with cameras and stuff, I can usually locate a pretty decent 5-year-old buck or two in the span of, a 3-4 month period. And, June, July, August, September, I can usually find something like that if I'm lucky. Now, whether they stick around or not, that's kind of been my Achilles heel here lately, the past couple of years. But, it's probably a 5-year-old buck. And not to say like, if I have a buck here above me, it was my first trad buck. He was probably like a 7 or 8-year-old buck, but he might score like 110, 115, but he's just gnarly and thick and just nasty.
Yeah.
Right.
And, something like that popped out, I would for sure.
Yeah. That's cool.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, something like a 5-year-old buck. I hate to put a score on it, but man, like if I see a 150, 160, I'm calling off work early.
Yeah. Well, in Ohio, in Southeast Ohio, generally, a 5-year-old buck is going to be 140s to 160s generally. I mean, obviously there's a lot to that, but that's, you get a 10-pointer in Ohio that's 5 years old, or a big 8 or a 9-pointer. It's going to be close to that. I hunted up there for a couple of years, and there's some big bucks in Ohio without a doubt.
There's not anymore.
There used to be, yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, 140, 150, that's a really good buck for around here. I mean, you drive a little bit west of here and you really start to run into some good deer, but for around this area, like a 150 is a hell of a deer around here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the things Ohio is the baiting aspect. You know what I mean? That puts a lot of it for a guy that's coming from out of state. That puts a lot of I don't know. It puts a lot of I don't know what the word I want to use is. it makes things a lot harder. Let's put it that way. I mean, if you get into a big public piece, obviously public, you can't bait in Ohio on public, but you can on the private. If you stay away from those edges where guys are maybe pulling bucks off of public and onto private and stuff like that, it's probably not as bad where you can get a big. Some of the places I've hunted weren't quite that big, and you had to kind of get up close to some of the private land to get deer. You know what I mean? To see deer, or you had to be so far away that the deer weren't affected by it. But there's really not. There's some big pieces in Ohio. There is some big pieces in Ohio, but Delaware we hunt. It's the same way. So Delaware is private land guys can bait. The public people can't. Which, okay, I'm cool with that. You own your land and everything, but when it comes to the late season, you can't. Like the public land guys don't even have a chance. The deer don't even go on. They stay on the farms. You know what I mean? Where guys got bait piles. So that throws a whole different thing in from a person coming from another state and going into a state that's like that. That's a big wrench to get thrown into your plans that you have to kind of plan ahead for. To me. Like Ohio or Delaware.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's a lot of crossbow hunters here. There's a lot of people that hunt with their kids here at a really super young age. So I mean, like some of my buddies hunt with their kids and they're like 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. If you walk on the neighbor's property, like there's maybe if you were to take a walk from my house here and do like a half-mile radius, there's got to be 20 corn piles within a half mile. There's just, there's people, there are a lot of smaller parcels, owns 30 acres, and next guy owns 5 acres. And like, there's somebody hunting on every single piece. And around here, I'll tell you the story in a second, but around here, if there's nobody hunting on a property, they just don't allow hunters. Like you rarely, with the exception of the other day, I found a couple like this, but you will not find a property that doesn't have someone on it and they've never been asked. So it's either going to be a no or there's already somebody there. So there's just a lot of small parcels, a lot of people hunting, and there's corn everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think you can kind of use it to your advantage if people are hunting on the neighbor's property with bait. Those deer might not be bedding on that property. Also, they might be bedding, 2 properties over and going a half mile after dark to get to that corn, and you can intercept them, if you can cut them off. And I think that, and a lot of my local buddies here agree with this, that baiting, you'll kill a lot of 2-3-year-old bucks on bait, 4-year-old bucks. The guys that are killing like 5 and older year-old bucks on bait, they're really, really, really being smart about it and low pressure, because if you screw one thing up, man, with a bait pile, like if you have a 5-year-old buck coming into bait and you get out too early from your tree and he was 5 minutes late getting there, like that's it. That was your one chance. You might not even know that you blew it, but a lot of guys do themselves way more harm. If they're trying to kill a mature 5-plus-year-old buck, they do themselves way more harm than good on bait. They're just putting a big beacon out there. Hey, I'm a hunter. I put this here. Come get it if you want. But 99.999% of their pictures are after dark.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a few people that bait in Jersey on the podcast. One guy's a real killer of really big bucks, and he basically, told us that he baits. Everybody else baits. He's got a bait to get the deer on his pieces, but his thing is, he says he's going to write a book about it. But he said that if you're going to hunt bait, you're going to hunt really mature bucks on bait like that, you got to have your setups where you can actually get in and out of your stand or your blind while the deer are on the bait, in and out without knocking them off of it and everything else. How he's doing that, I don't know. We didn't really get into all that. He said, you can read my book when I write it, but so I don't know if he's using creeks with big head, with hedges and creeks and popping up a tree that way. But if you can do that, then it's wow. That kind of beats what you're saying. If there's a possibility of being able to do that, how you do it, I'm not really sure. But you remember what I'm talking about, John?
I do.
Jason?
I do remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He said he's little 1 acre pieces. He'll put a bait pile in there, and he can almost bait with the deer in there. That's basically what he said. He can almost like freshen the baits up while they're in there and hunt them. So how he's doing that, I have no idea. I've been hunting for 40 something years, and I haven't been able to quite figure that out, but I don't hunt on bait either though. So, but yeah.
You guys have probably heard Lee and Tiffany Lukowski talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Feed deer, in the summertime. And I've heard Lee talk about like they don't worry about how often they're going in there in the summertime. Like they will purposely go in there every day on the side by side or whatever and rebait and check, just put their scent in there every day. And eventually the deer just kind of, they just say, well, this is normal. This isn't a threat anymore.
Yeah.
Leave a noise. So whenever those deer do smell you in October, November, they get that same scent. They're not too worried about it. But I don't know, man. I think that some of the, and I think all deer have personalities too, but their own personalities. But some of these old bucks, they just will not tolerate anything. I missed a buck in 18, 19, and watching him in the summer before that on a hayfield. And I had pictures of him for about a month prior to that. He was using a couple different trails to come into this alfalfa field in the evening. And it was like he's using trails. So I went in, it was October 3rd or 4th. It was really early in the season. And I went in and I picked one of the trails and I popped up a stand on it on the downwind side of it. And he came in and he stood underneath my tree. And long story short, I missed him. I might have like grazed some hair on the top of his back, and I never saw that deer again. That deer never came back. Never had another photo of him, never saw him again the rest of the season. It was like, that was it, man. Like he's just not going to tolerate it. Something bad happened there. I think he caught a little wind right before that. So he, that even double boogered him up there. And it's like some deer, the deer I just showed you up on the wall here, that super old one, he just kind of, in his older age, he kind of got a little bit lackadaisical about it. I killed him in December. I had missed him. Actually, I grazed his shoulder blades to the end of November. And this dude just walked around like, no, I've made it this long. I'm this old. I'm the king dingling here. Nothing's going to hurt me. He was walking in day. I had daylight pictures of this deer every single day. He was on a turnip patch, so he just didn't give a crap about anything. But, the other buck that I'm telling you about that I missed, he had one shot at that deer and that's it. So,
yeah, like you said, they all have different personalities. I've heard people, talking about bait piles or whatever. I've heard people talk about you have to build when you're building. Like, let's just say you have 1 acre that you can bait on in your backyard. You have to actually build it generationally into the deer to not be scared until you're ready to pluck one. You know what I mean? Like you have to bait for years and years and years on some of those places. What's that?
It's called grooming.
Yeah, well, basically that's what it would be. Yeah, basically grooming. Like you're not giving them any. You're not giving those deer any reason to really fear it, even if you're around there or anything like that. There's no fear. They haven't seen a murder scene. You know what I mean? So until the day that buck gets to the point where you want to do it. So
it's tricky.
Well, I saw. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The tricky thing, real quick, like when you said there's like around here, there's a ton of bait piles around here. The tricky thing, if you set up a corn pile, and for inventory purposes in July, and they come and smell that, maybe they're not getting spooked off of yours, but your sloppy neighbor a quarter mile down the road also has corn out, and he's every day with his kids, with his dogs, and I think that they can start to associate corn or whatever with the boogeyman, with bad stuff. So just because it's not on your property that it's bad, or they might have got wounded last year on a corn pile.
Mm-hmm.
They don't deal with it, or they got wounded on a feeder, so they don't do feeders anymore. They might eat corn off the ground, but they're not going to do a tripod feeder anymore. So,
right.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of the conversation that we had with Dieter, talking about how when deer experience threats from 20 feet from a tree, hunting 12 feet from a tree is no longer a threat.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's definitely conditioning the deer.
When I that on that show, I was like, yes, like that makes perfect sense, because, and I find it in some other states too, like Kansas, deer don't seem like they look up as much around there, but like around here, if you're 20 feet, they're picking you out. If you're 12 feet, they might not pick you. And that's exactly what he's talking about. Like that. Absolutely. That's true. He's spot on with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar here in Jersey. I mean, the more that we talk with others around the country, like, your situation, with baiting and the pressure of people hunting every single parcel available. I'm experiencing that. I mean, I have been hunting, permission private, but, and I experience that all the time. Like, I mean, bait piles here, but, and Greg, actually, talking with him, kind of share some knowledge on how to use it to your advantage, and it works,
Yep.
Definitely works.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's enough bait pile talk anyway, but I don't think any of us use bait piles. So
No, we don't.
I can't afford it. I mean, corn's it's like $11-12 a bag here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And not only that, though, like I look at it, and then we'll get off it, but it takes work. That's a lot of work to lug all that. Like, why not just take that energy and put it into scouting? I don't know. I'm not hating. I'm just that's how my mind works.
Yeah. So Tim, real quick, would you go over your gear for people that are listening? And like part of this whole trad month is to get people to want to think about getting their grandpa's bow out, or maybe finding a recurve someplace on Facebook Marketplace or something like that, and just to give it a shot. So why don't we go through and talk about where you started real quick. I know that you used to collected bows, or you use a lot of different bows, but maybe like where you started, where you're at right now, and just a quick journey without hitting every single one, but just a quick journey from like where you started to where you're at, and maybe even get into like your aiming method or your shooting style.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It's a loaded question.
It is, but yeah.
Loaded, but it's not. I mean, unlike some trad guys, like I really try and just really keep it simple on that stuff on the aiming side. But on the bow side, when I got started, I bought a used bow online. I think it was from Archery Talk, and it was a Predator recurve bow, and it was way too heavy for me. And this is one of the things you hear a lot of guys say when they first get into this stuff, that they bought a 50-pound bow or something like that. And it's just, if I could have done that over again, and if you're out there listening and you're thinking about it, like, you need a 40-pound bow, 100%, and you need to just buy a cheap one. Learn how to shoot it, get a 40-pound bow. Honestly, you get a 35-pound bow and shoot it for a couple months and bump it up to a heavier one. But I was way overbowed at the beginning, and it really kind of soured my taste for it a little bit. I still fought through it and stuck with it, but it would have been a lot more enjoyable if I had a lighter bow. And from there, the first custom bow that I bought, I ordered one from South Cox, who we talked about earlier. Beautiful bow. Killed a couple deer with that one, and as my friendship with him grew, like I kept ordering more and more, and we were kind of sometimes like I would edit a video for him in exchange for a bow. So like I probably have 6 or 8 of his bows. I actually bought a bow from a guy today that it was one that I had bought from South. I sold it to a guy and told him, if you ever sell this, I want to buy it back. And I bought it back from him today.
Nice.
But South makes amazing bows. I shoot a couple tall tines recurves from Michael Arnett. He makes an bow as well. He's kind of a younger boyer on the scene. I think he's had tall tines for maybe 4 or 5 years now, but he's a good buddy of mine as well. I should just carry you over there and show you these bows.
Let's do it. Let's check them out. So if you guys are just listening, we do post these on YouTube. So
okay.
At the I guess hour and 5 minute, you can fast forward and check out these bows.
Can you see these?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So this is a 1950 something Damon Howitt Hunter that I just picked up at the Compton Rendezvous. This is a South Cox Wolverine G10, green G10.
Yeah.
This is a 1988 Silvertip, Schaefer Silvertip recurve, made by Paul Schaefer himself. This is like the holy grail of bows.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'll probably start out hunting with this bow this year, the Silvertip.
Okay.
Set this down. This is an old Browning Explorer 2 that I just picked up. Hope this isn't dark. This is that first bow that I got from South that I was telling you guys about.
Mm-hmm.
So is it that Browning that you bought back? You sold and bought back?
No, that was another stalker, and I don't have it back yet.
Oh, gotcha.
It should be here. Here Thursday, according to tracking.
I got you.
How's that? Better?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is that first one that I was talking about that I got from South.
No, he makes a beautiful bow.
Yeah, he really, really does.
Yeah,
he really does. Another coyote here from South, recurve. This is a Tall Tines by Arnett, Michael Arnett. It's got.
Where's he out of? Where's Michael Arnett out of?
He is out of Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
And then another bow of South's in the corner there. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But yeah, there's bows all over the place in here. I'm not as big of a bow maniac as some guys are. Some guys are a lot worse than I. That's what I tell my wife anyway.
Yeah.
But
that's it.
Yeah, I wouldn't classify myself as a collector, but I have a handful of bows that I like to have.
So when we look through that lineup of bows right there, poundage wise, what's your highest and what's your lowest and what's your average? I would say then. Average
is about 50 pounds.
Okay.
At my draw length. So yeah, right around like 50 or so. Give or take a few.
No, when you say, and we'll get back to you finishing up you said you're going to be hunting with the silver tip. When you say that you're starting with that, you're going to start the season with that, you don't have any problems at all with the cast from bow to bow to bow and getting your, getting your range and everything throughout the season by changing like that. Like for me, that's a big change for me. Yeah. I'm going to be shooting right underneath the briskets of does and everything else. You know what I mean? By changing arrows, poundages, bows. You don't have any problem with that, Tim? Or what's your experience?
If I was like going out and shooting 3D courses or something, yeah, I would have a big issue with that. But like I said, like most of these tree stand setups that I have, they're 20 yards and in. Counters I have are 10 yards and in. They're super close stuff, and most of these bows are right around the same poundage. They're 48 to 52. I'm drawing same draw length. I actually use the same arrows out of a lot of them, so it's not a situation where I'm having to completely like relearn how I'm holding. Like the thing that I do see from one bow to another are horizontal hold differences there. Like if I shoot this silver tip for a day, then I pick up a stalker, like it might be hitting 3-4 inches to the right or to the left, but like casts not so much. And if there is any difference in cast there, like I can usually shoot it for 15 minutes and kind of relearn where it's at. But
gotcha.
Or anything.
Yeah. So when you're saying that you're shooting the same arrow, that means your mind for a 48 to a 51, those 3 pounds aren't going to be that much difference with when you're shooting a 590 grain arrow. Let's just say that's not that big of a deal.
Or a 720 grain arrow. Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yep.
Not that big of a deal for me.
Yep. Good deal. So let's talk about that arrow then. Let's talk about what you run in weight, what your spine is, and what you're putting on the front.
The past few years, I've been shooting aluminums. I have an aluminum fetish right now. Mm-hmm. I buy a lot of like new old stock stuff, like from eBay or from guys online or whatever. But I really like shooting arrows that are borderline older than I am. Right. Just thinking like, oh, these things were sitting on a shelf in an archery shop for the last 30 years, and now they're here. I'm gonna suit them up and shoot them. But I shoot a lot of 2219s, which is like a 337 spine, so it's like a 340 carbon, and 200 grains up front usually. So my arrows, they usually run like mid to high 600 grains. Sometimes they bump over 700 grains depending on how long they are. But I think last year they were right around like 680, 690, which, if you have compound guys listening, they're going to be like, holy crap, like it'd be such a slow arrow. But like inside 15 yards, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They hit like freight trains, and because they're so heavy, they soak up so much noise that they're just like so quiet, man. I shoot one of these, and then I shoot like a gold tip Pierce next to it, and it's night and day difference, the amount of noise that they soak up from the bow.
Yeah.
So I feel like anything that you lose in speed, you gain with a heavy arrow, you gain in quietness.
Yeah.
So I shoot a compound, and my arrow last year was over 600, well over 600.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But this year I am dropping down to about 5. I lowered my draw weight 5 pounds, and I'm probably going to decrease it next year another 5. Just Todd and I, we did a podcast on longevity, like being able to still draw back as long as we can and hunt the way that we want to for as long as possible. And there's no need to pull back 70 pounds, for me anyway. So,
yeah. We had some of our first episodes. We had the Ranch Fairy and then Dr. Ashby on, and so 690 is not really heavy for those guys. You know what I mean? So, like Dr. Ashby will say the 650. He does not even talk about bow weight. He just talks about arrow weight. He doesn't care if it's a 45 pound bow or it's a 60 pound bow. He doesn't really care. It's about the arrow setup. It's about that 650 grains with a single bevel up front. You know what I mean? So he doesn't really care about the bow weight. It's not even really one of his factors, So yeah, that's a good deal.
I still might shoot the heavier one. I don't know. I'm going to put I'll do some testing on them.
Yeah.
Between the two.
I'm shooting about a 727 grain arrow right now out of my 45 pound longbow. So I'm relearning that cast because I've been shooting a 590 out of my Satori for the last few years, but that Satori's a little bit on the heavy side for me right now. So
that's probably
so I got to ask you guys this, so one thing that kind of, there's a couple things, but one of the main things that has kept the meter from like more staying towards a compound is just the thought of going from, let's call it a pin sight to shooting naturally or instinctive shooting. And that just seems like a big mountain to climb. And is it something that I should start now and then plan on, okay, 2 years from now I'll have it down, or is it something that's fairly easy to pick up? I guess it depends on the person and all that too, but what has been your experience, Tim, with the learning curve of
when I shot a compound for the last 5-6 years that I shot a compound, I shot a single pin slider. It was a CBE Tech Hunter Pro. To date my compound, it probably sound like an ancient sight to you guys, but it was a single pin slider, and I would set it at, I would never move it in a hunting situation. I would set it at 30 yards. And I had a sight tape and everything, but I would set it at 30 yards. And if I had a deer at 20, I would aim at the bottom of their chest. If I had a deer at 40, I would aim, top of their back, or not even, just a couple inches high. And if it was anything further than that, it was usually like a field edge scenario where they were feeding and I had time to range them with the rangefinder and dial in my sight tape. I had time to do all that. And now I don't shoot instinctive. I don't do that. I use my arrow tip exactly the same as I use that single pin on that CBE. So I know what that point on is, and it's typically like the way, as heavy as my arrow is, that it's like 20 yards. So I put that tip, if I have a deer at 20 yards, I put that tip right on. If a deer is at 10 yards, I put it a little bit low. If it's at 30 yards, I'm probably not shooting anyway, but if I wanted to, I'm holding a little bit high. So I'm using my arrow tip exactly like a single pin sight. Okay. And there's no, and you could pick that up in a few days.
Yeah. So really the only thing changing is then your anchor point in comparison to a compound.
Yeah. Right. And, no let off also, but.
Well, yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I'm not saying that you're doing this, John, but a lot of people are, they just they overthink what it's going to take to be successful in this. And dude, I guarantee, if not trying to talk you into making the jump, but if we bought you a used recurve, I sent you one of these bows tonight, you would be hunt ready in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you were shooting every night, every other night. Yeah. I mean, it's not the old stigma of you're going to have to put months and months into this. You don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
As long as you tell yourself, this year, it's 20 yards an in, it's 25 yards an in. I'm that 40-yard shot.
Well, I don't do that anyway. I mean, just from the habitat of where I hunt, with it being so thick. I mean, my closest shot or my furthest shot last year was 18 yards, I think, 19 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that trad zone.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with people that go back and forth either. I got some buddies that go back and forth. It doesn't have to be sell your compounds and go to the dark side. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be, it can be every other hunt you hunt with this, really.
A lot of it for me is dependent on what my shoulders are telling me to do right now. I have a 45-pound old single cam that I have to pop out every once in a while on my shoulders. I got back from ETAR last year, and I probably put 100 arrows through that day or whatever that I was up there. And I came back, and I generally shoot every day. And I came back, I took the Sunday, I went up Saturday. I took the Sunday off. And Monday after work, I went up to take a shot, and I couldn't draw my bow. My bow arm, actually, shoulders started collapsing on me when I couldn't get to full draw. Yeah. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? I got a month before velvet season opens up here. What the hell's going on? I was so angry, man. You know what I mean? I was still shooting my 590. I took my arrows out of my Selway and put them in my compound quiver. I was shooting a 590 grain arrow with a 250 grain cutthroat up front, and they were flying perfect out of a 45-pound single cam, to be honest with you. But I had to bounce back and forth a little bit last year, and it really sucked. I didn't like it at all. It's just not. I hated going back after 7 years or something, going back looking through a peep sight and a mechanic. You know what I mean? A wrist strat. It sucked. But it is what it is. It is what it is. You get older, Timmer. You're gonna start. What do you said? You're 38. You got about 12 years, and you're gonna start falling apart real quick, buddy.
Some little shoulder pains now that are inexplicable. I don't know why. I don't know where they're coming from, and it's little aches and pains. It's bad when you start to get up in the morning, hurt, and all that you did yesterday was sit in your truck and like change some diapers and walk the dog at night and shoot your bow in the yard. You didn't do anything. You didn't climb any trees, and your knees hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's starting. It's starting, Tim.
All those sports you played when you were a young kid and all the running around you did and falling out of trees and building tree forts and falling from branch to branch, all that stuff you did when you were a kid, it does come around.
Yeah.
It does come around.
100%.
Yeah. So one of the things you had said, this is one of my questions for you is, you already answered it, but we're gonna throw that one out. You went to too heavy of a bow. That was one of the things you said you would tell yourself not to do. But besides that, what would Tim Nebel today tell the Tim Nebel that was starting out with that first bow and getting into this? What would you tell yourself to do differently after the years that you've been doing this?
From a traditional perspective.
Yeah, not a life thing.
Yeah.
We all have 10 things we could tell ourselves we wouldn't have done in our lives.
Well, from a trad perspective,
Yeah.
I think. Let me think about that one. I don't think there's too much that I would. I think I've blown a couple encounters on like mega bucks in the last since I took a recurve up, and I think I put too much pressure on myself in the beginning because I still haven't killed like what I call caliber mega buck at like 170. I've never killed anything that big, and I put too much pressure on myself in the beginning, those beginning years with the recurve, that I was just like devastated, man. Like when I missed that buck, or the year prior to that, I was after a big deer. Somebody ended up finding him dead after that, and he scored like 186, 187, something like that. But I had an encounter with him. He came in what I thought was upwind to me, and he must have caught a thermal or something, and he just like, but it's just, I really, really beat myself up at the beginning there, like kind of, that devil sitting on my shoulder talking like, man, like you shouldn't have done this. Like this should have been something that you did like, 10, 15 years down the road, not now before you've kind of accomplished what you wanted to accomplish in bow hunting. Like you should have done this later. And it kind of took a little bit of the fun out of it for me. And I think the stage that I'm in now is, I'm trying to, and in 2023, I really want to do this, but I want to, regardless of what I have on camera in July, August, September, I just want to put my emphasis on having a good time, having good encounters in the woods, enjoying it, because like I said, I don't get out as much as I used to with the baby and everything. And, I don't have to be like an Adam Hayes or, Andre DeQuitt. I don't have to be that guy. I can like, yes, it's one of the primary reasons I moved here was to chase big deer like that, but I can still hunt and have a good time and not, be hunting deer like that, or be killing deer like that. Cause the last couple, I haven't killed a buck in 2 years. I've been skunked the last 2 years. And both of those years, I was chasing one buck in particular the last 2 years, and he was just a ghost, man. Like I had one encounter with him 2 years ago. I wounded him. I hit him high in the shoulder, and spent the rest of that year chasing him. He came back last year. I spent the entire year waiting this deer out, and he was a ghost. And it just like, it made my season, not as much fun as it could have been. I should have been bouncing around. I should have been exploring new areas. Should have been hunting some old areas that I have always had a great time at and really loved to hunt. But instead I was just waiting. I was waiting at his house, and he never came home. Yeah. And it's not a very fun way to spend a fall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I guess it's not trad specific, but.
Well, I mean, I would say that the two things that I took away is I think what resonated real well is that you don't have to go all in. I mean, it is something that you could be an either or, get started with a trad and you can still use because I immediately think just that's my mentality. Like if I pick something new up, I'm like all in. So that's big. And then also the poundage, like stay around that 40-pound mark also is a good rule. Cause without talking with Todd or you or anything like that, I'm thinking, well, I pull a 65 pound. So, not even thinking about let off. And I mean, I know there's no let off on a traditional bow, but still I'm like,
yeah. So, okay, I guess we'll jump back into this thing. Everybody's on chargers, and John, you drain your main vein there. You're all good to go.
Good to go.
All right, let's get rocking again. All right, so really good answer, Tim, on what you wouldn't do years ago when you first started. That's a good one. I like that one, man. About the different size bucks you chase or chasing like single deer and being worried about making the change. That's good.
I like the fact, dude. Hold on a sec. I like the fact that you said you just want to go back to having fun, and I think that's something that's missing often in the hunting industry because of the pressures from social media, from just the industry as a whole. And if those of you that listen to this, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. You got to make a change. You got to switch it up. So it's good. It's good to hear you, especially somebody like with your experience, Tim, and you gave it a 2-year effort chasing one buck, and you're humble enough to say, all right, you won. I'm going to go have fun now. That's kind of how I'm perceiving that message, which I think is great.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So Tim, why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit? Why don't you give your an opportunity to go ahead and talk about the your new podcast? I know you're a couple episodes in, but I think through some of the messages and stuff like that we sent back and forth, that you're about to unleash on the world a bunch more, right? So let's give yourself an opportunity to talk about it, man. I want to hear about it too.
Sure. Yeah. It's called the Traditional Bow Hunting Podcast. Real original, right? Real nice generic name there. But it's myself, Tyler Carlson, and Nick White. And we, I guess the goal of the show is kind of to preserve the stories and memories and experiences and hunts of a lot of these older guys that came before us, and they kind of paved the way for what we're doing now, and not just paved the way for trad people, but paved the way for compound guys as well. Yeah. Back in the 50s, 60s, 80s, and all that. We're 2 episodes deep now. It's probably going to be a more relaxed format. All 3 of us have young kids. We'll probably do an episode or 2 a month, maybe to start, and kind of see where it goes from there. But yeah, we have a little bit of a guest list put together so far, and it'll just be fun. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, I listened to the Gene Wenzel, the classic. Hey, are we recording yet?
Yeah.
Did you get that? Did you get that? Did you get that part?
Yeah.
Is it all right for me to say that? Yeah, all the classic Gene stuff, man. I love it.
Yeah.
You've built up a very big network of good, I don't want to say old, but just good old bow hunters, man. You got a great network to draw from. And, some of the podcasts you've done in the past with some of these guys, I mean, you can tell how much they have respect for you, man, and how much they know that you are going to be one of those guys that are carrying the torch for this sport. You know what I mean?
It's cool now because whenever we were doing those initial podcasts on the push side of things, like whenever we first started interviewing these old guys, none of them knew what a podcast was. We had to there was always a starting conversation where it was like, okay, we're going to call you from this number at this time of night, and you're not going to recognize the number because it's a Skype number, but pick up anyway. And so we had to it's kind of like internet radio. It's like a radio program, but it's on the internet. And, to a lot of these old guys, like I mean, there's a couple hundred of them that we did interviews with at the Push, but now, they've been on, Gene's been on 10, 15 shows. Barry's been on probably 20, 30 shows. So now like they know what a podcast is and they listen to them themselves. I think Gene listens to a lot of shows himself. So, they'll ask afterward, like how many people listen to that? Like, was it a good hit? They want to know what the feedback has been. So I think it's kind of turned podcasting. I'm sure you guys are seeing now, like it's kind of turned the corner now where it's a little more mainstream, and even the older crowd of guys, they're putting the app on their phone or they're going to your website and they're listening to the episodes on there. So it's pretty neat.
I tell you what, we've interviewed some guys from like Western Pennsylvania and stuff like that, in some other country places where some of these guys are down in hollers and stuff like that, man. Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you what, like we had a little bit of a hard time hooking up, and it seemed like it was probably more on my side than anybody's. But I can only imagine, like, especially when those guys were, they're in where are the Wenzels now? Are they Iowa or Illinois?
One's in Iowa, one's in Montana. Yeah. Okay.
One did stay out in Montana. I was gonna say it's got to be hard as heck to get good Wi-Fi and everything for like a guy out in Montana. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, yeah. Audio is definitely a challenge with a lot of these guys. I remember one time with the Push, we did an episode with Fred Eichler, and he was out guiding or something, and he literally pulled over. He drove up the mountain. Because he didn't have service at his cabin. He drove up the mountain in his pickup truck and sat there and idled for like an hour and a half on the side of the road and talked to us first. So that's, kind of speaks about what kind of guy he is. But did you, on the Gene Wenzel episode we just put out, did you hear about what we're going to get into with his stuff now? About the Legends Not
stuff? Yeah. He's got all the boxes of tapes and what is it, like VCRs and Super 8s and stuff like that. What is it all you're going to be doing?
So back in the 70s and 80s, so Gene and another gentleman, his name was Jim Chin, traveled the country basically doing what you guys and what I'm doing right now, podcasting. So they had a hit list of these old bow hunters that they wanted to interview, and they typed out like an interview questionnaire sheet, and they drove all over the country interviewing people on mostly like small audio cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And the plan was for them to transcribe them to text and make a book out of it. Oh, so they were just, recording it to take audio notes that they would later make a book out of. And nothing ever happened with the project. The project just kind of like fizzled out, and it was, maybe 3/4 of the way done. So Gene has had this cardboard box of audio tapes of all these old guys from the 60s, 70s, 80s in a storage unit for the last 30 some years. And no one has, not even Gene himself, has heard the audio on these tapes.
Wow.
So Gene,
that is gold. That is gold, brother.
He gave the cardboard box to Tyler a couple of weeks ago, and Tyler bought some kind of contraption that it's like a tape player that has a USB output that you can put into your computer and turn these cassette tapes into an MP3. So we're going to make a series out of this and start putting out episodes that are, Gene Wenzel was literally podcasting with people 30, 40 years before podcasting was even thought of. He didn't even think that that's what he was doing, but that's what he was doing. And the audio, man, like when you guys hear the audio, it's like, you can tell it's older, but it's still crystal clear. And to think like this guy that the interview is, he's dead.
Yeah.
He's dead. It's literally an interview with a ghost that's coming out for the very first time. No one's, not even Gene himself, has heard the audio on this since he hit the record button.
Dude, he's going to probably cry when he starts hearing some of that. Him and Barry both will probably cry because they're friends of theirs and they're acquaintances and people that were in the industry. Like, I mean, think about Barry and Gene Wenzel. I mean, all the top killers now that are around, they talk about them and Miles Keller as being the real OGs of bow hunting. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so just think about that. And then all the friends that they had and being able to go around and record and maybe they weren't even friends. Maybe they were just somebody like that somebody else that led them to, like, this guy's in Montana in this other county over here. He's willing to sit down with you, and talk to you in a diner or something. However they did it, who knows? But that is pure gold, Tim. Yeah, that is pure gold.
It's going to be pretty neat.
So do you have like an ETA as to when that'll start coming out?
I would say it would be out this summer for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. That's good.
We'll probably start trickling them out. And they, Tyler was telling me most of the guys, like if he has an interview with, say like Jack Howard, there's 3 full cassette tapes. So it's like an hour and a half interview with this guy. And they're asking the same kind of questions that you guys ask people.
Right.
What was your biggest challenge when you got into traditional? Tell me about your equipment, things like that. So it's going to be neat to hear these answers from guys that are super dated and that you don't even know what kind of equipment they're talking about now. But it's the cool thing. I think it will be to hear some of the challenges that these guys faced. And it's the same shit that you guys are going through right now. It's the same stuff that's giving me a hard time, that the struggles that people are having with their family and balancing that and their job and bow hunting. Like, it's going to be a cool thing to hear that some guy went through this 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're going through the same thing. So.
Yep.
With wooden arrows. That's exciting. Yeah. That's cool.
With wooden and aluminum arrows. And you're putting yourself back in the aluminum arrow thing. So that's cool, man. Yeah. That's really cool. Tim, I can't wait to hear that, man.
I can't either. I haven't heard anything either.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, I'm sure. That is sweet. So, Tim, I tell you what, man, I really, really appreciate your time today. It was a real blessing for you to spend a little bit of time with us. We're about 90 minutes here for you to spend a little bit of time with us today and help us with our podcast. And if there's any way that you can maybe get 2 people, because we don't have that big of an audience, but if 2 people can come over and find yours because of us, that would be us being able to give something back to somebody like you. You know what I mean? That came over and gave us some time, man. So why don't you just go ahead one more time, tell everybody where they can find you on all the different social media, maybe your website and everything else.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly appreciate the invite to come on. It's super flattering that anybody would want to talk to me about any of this stuff. I don't think of myself as like somebody that's guest worthy. I'm always on the other side, like the side of the microphone that you guys are on. So to think that somebody would want to talk to me and like actually listen to what I'm saying about stuff like this is kind of, it's a strange feeling and it's flattering. So thank you guys a lot for that. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, not so much anymore, but Instagram is kind of the main place that you can find me. Just Tim Nebel or TD Nebel on there. And our website, we just started a new website for this podcast, kind of with the goal of, like, a lot of these older guys don't have smartphones yet, or they don't have apps on their phone to listen to this stuff. So we just put like a listen here tab on the website that you can listen to them on your computer or work or whatever. But that's just tradbowhunting.com. So
very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on, man. It's good meeting you. I'd say you're moving the needle, moving the meter for me. But it's not going to be this year, though. I can tell you that. But no, greatly appreciate you coming on for sure. And for everybody else listening, we ask you to do 3 things: rate the show, drop a comment, and read Genesis 27:3. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
Seek wilderness.